What's up guys, you got Crave here and this is Anno 1800. I was lucky enough to get a key for the recent closed beta and I had such a fun time with the game. So much fun that I'd often get reminders from the game itself to take a break. Now, just to set things in perspective, I haven't really played any of the previous games, so this is really sort of a fresh take on Anno and what it can offer. I mean, I played other city management or city building games and RTS games, but it's been a while. So with that being said, let's get to it. This particular game is set in the time period as mentioned in the title, and with that setting, it's up to you to build your empire. There are various ways to start off, like having a limited amount of resources or setting the number of ships you'll have from the start or from the get-go. I picked the easiest and most generous of settings, being somewhat new to the game. And as with most games in the genre, you'll have to start from scratch. The basics of growing your population is there, and it is vital to growing your empire. You'll worry about housing, building smaller industries to start with, and to basically just feed and give your people something to do. So in Anno 1800, you will start with farms, basic marketplaces, finding a decent source of raw materials like wood, and making sure all of it is connected initially to a strong road network. You'll eventually work your way up to shipping lanes or routes that's expected. As you progress in time, you eventually have to become a powerhouse. This is important not only because you want your empire to thrive, but it also plays an important role when you meet up with other civilizations. We'll get to that later in the gameplay section, but in growing your empire, the basics have to be set. So, I mentioned earlier that you would start off with basic housing structures like farms. Now, meeting certain requirements like a fully lived-in residence and meeting their material needs allows you then to upgrade those base forms into something better. This in turn it affects how you should grow or develop newer industries. If you initially needed fish, upgraded household would then add or change up their needs to something else like beer or sausages. This ties into most things in Anno into a progression system that becomes very meaningful. I can't further stress how this is very much satisfying to observe in the game. It's done so well that you want to keep going or bet on yourself how much more minutes you can actually spend in the game without forgetting other responsibilities in real life. It's so easy to get lost in it, especially when you start upgrading and managing resources across different industries, ships, islands, and all the properties you own. This is the very basic theme of Anno 1800 and it is a very, very solid one. Gameplay-wise, there is one problem with Anno, and it's also what's so amazing about it. It is very rich in gameplay. There's a lot to go through in this aspect, so I'll just mention the things that stand out for me. Now, there are different playing speeds and play goals in Anno, and I focused on peaceful expansion during my time in the closed beta. I actually had to start for about 4 or 5 games until I understood how to go about things. The first thing that's important to mention is that watching numbers is a big factor in this game. You have to pay attention to your cash flow, obviously, and that's made evident in the upper left portion of the interface once you're inside the game world. But it's the not so obvious numbers that will really make you ready to upgrade your buildings and industries and eventually help you progress your empire. I mentioned earlier that you have to start from scratch with buildings like a farm. Clicking individual residences shows requirements that you have to meet to get them upgraded. An upgrade will require that a housing is fully lived in, and for that to happen you have to provide their needs. So for a basic farmhouse, there might be a need to give the tenants some food like fish, getting them some clothing, things of the sort. Now, the meters you see in your interface will help determine whether those needs are being met. Once tenants are satisfied, the household can then be upgraded to the next level. This then introduces you to a host of new industries and requirements to be met. It's somewhat of a snowball effect if you can get it going. In my first few attempts, I stalled or ended up being very much in the red in terms of cash flow. Once I understood things though, the money just came naturally. At least until the next upgrade scenario where you have to manage new industries and understand how they work with specific household types. Speaking of industries, it's the requirements for raw materials and structures that adds an important layer of gameplay to Anno. Your residents will also have to have jobs, and that's what those industries are for. It starts out very simple. You need wood, just build the 2 structures that produce them. It eventually evolves into something that's a bit more complex where the final production structure can require the same types of raw material. This means making more of the same building that refines the raw material. To add some depth, you may find your residents won't be too happy having certain structures, industrial structures, so close to their housing areas, as they may find them to be a bit unsightly. They might also complain about the pollution from steel mills, or you may have to opt to explore to a different island for the raw materials that you need. That means creating shipping routes to meet the needs of one island. There's also the possibility of engaging in trade with other nations, and that requires managing relations. Similar to games like Civilization or Master of Magic, there is an element of diplomacy in Anno. The basics are there. You can appeal to them, you can insult them, create a trade pact, and so on. I tried to make sure that things were peaceful with my neighbors, as I did focus on expansion without the need for aggression. Well, actually, I tried engaging war with a naturally hostile group in the game through naval combat, but sadly, the 2 attempts that I made, it didn't work out so well for me, so I just basically skipped that part. So, gameplay-wise, Anno 1800 is very rich, as I mentioned. There's a lot of other things that I haven't mentioned, but I think I was able to outline the things that were most interesting for me. Now, I don't know how well the Anno series has done in terms of sales, but the developer for this particular game, Blue Byte, sure did something right. The game looks and sounds amazing. It was very taxing on my system though. I run with a 4790K processor paired with a 1080, and I really couldn't max it out. I had to settle with, I think, high settings or somewhere around that range to at least hover above 40 to 50 FPS, and when zooming in with everything happening, I sometimes had to settle for around 30 FPS. Anyway, as I mentioned, Anno 1800 is a great looking game. The structures, islands, vegetation, the bodies of water looked really good. I liked how rich the world looked, but at the same time there was a certain neatness to it. Provided you don't mess up your structure planning or road network like I did at times with the game, you'll get the same experience all throughout. Zooming in is a great up-and-close personal look at your empire. You can be looking at a fire that needs to be put out, a festival that's being celebrated in your name, or just simply looking at the normal daily activities of your population. There is so much detail in this game that looking at it is another factor that just makes it difficult to keep track of time while you're playing. The auditory experience is also, it basically just matches everything so well. You'll hear very appropriate background music coupled with the specific sounds being made in the area that you are focused on. You can hear the cheers of the crowd, the bells in town, the tense music when there is a riot happening. Even combat sounds are very nice. It's not wildly delivered, and it's basically just simply right so that you can hear enough the cannon sounds and the boom that goes with it whenever you are in combat. So Anno does a great job in terms of the look and sound to help immerse you in the gameplay. In summary, my experience with Anno 1800 in the closed beta was a very, very good one. It reminds me of why empire building, population management with real-time strategy elements thrown in makes for a great gaming experience. Ubisoft has pushed back the release of this title for towards April or mid-April, I think, and definitely I'm looking forward to it. I really didn't want the beta to end. I admittedly even got the notification that there is no time-based achievement in Anno because I think I had been at it for about 8 hours in one session. It's, well, nice of Blue Byte to add reminders like that. Well, again, you got Crave here. Thanks for watching.